Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Today I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Good, even better now. I actually thought I thought we were running later than we were, but it was only a minute, so I'll take it.
Hey,
So,
everything's a win-win.
so we're doing our weekly live chat where we talk about a specific topic. Tonight we're talking about secrets, and you suggested it.
Yeah, I mean, usually we try to pull things from our own games, and there are plenty of times where, secrets can happen or secrets do happen. I mean, technically everything the DM prepares ahead of time that isn't out there yet is a secret. But I happen to be just going out for a walk, trying to, think about what I'm going to do, and a session that I was going to be running, and I was in the woods. I happened to see this little alcovey thing, and it's like, oh, that could have been some kind of secret hideout or what have you. So like, I pitched the concept to you of, oh, what about secret locations or just secrets in general, and be able to expand into a lot of different things. So this one was inspired by literally just the inspiration.
Yeah, so I figured, you since you had put both of those ideas out there, I'm like, well, we go with secrets. I feel like a secret location can fit right in there. So whatever you want to talk about with locations works just fine. Hello,
Absolutely.
Mr. Rob's cleaning service,
Hey.
and everyone else in the
So
chat as well. So
so the okay.
you just had a game Friday, right?
Yes, sir.
Was that the kids
And it
game?
was that was the kids game, and it was one of those where we had just wrapped up a fairly big combat, and it was a good solid 3 hours of you know not touching the combat pillar at all. Everybody seemed to have a lot of fun with it. There were some things that that the kids love, bouncing ideas off and speculations and what have you. And while there weren't a whole lot of secrets that were divulged there, I felt like it was a good mix of the social and exploration pillar.
So the thing about secrets in a game is one, it can really get the juices flowing, or it can really have other lasting effects in your game that you may not want.
Right.
Um, Especially like when it's one thing for like the players maybe have the players when they have secrets that they're keeping from other players and they start to come out. Like that's what I was kind of thinking about. Like we've had this happen in our own games, and when you do it sparingly, both as the player and as a GM and as the GM, usually working together, it can make for some really cool um, stories in your games and narratives. But if it's done too much, I feel like then none of your players will trust each other. And not, I don't even talk about the characters. I'm literally talking about the players not trusting each other. Like, I,
Well,
I kind of low key hate the player that always keeps their character sheet secret. Uh, just whether I'm the DM or another player, I just find it gets old and annoying.
I can understand that aspect, but on the flip side, I honestly feel that every single character at the table is going to have some kind of secrets. And if you just show up in session one, you're like, here's my entire backstory, and you give it all out there, and you've got no mystery. I feel like it's really weird and doesn't fit the way real people would honestly work. And I know the last like long-standing D&D character that I felt like I made was the character for your Under the Dome game. And while there is not a lengthy backstory, I tried to respect the way you do things. I felt like there were two major factors in my character story. The one part that he is a simic hybrid and is involved in the whole body shaping nonsense that is part of the game because I kind of pushed it in there. And then there's a whole aspect of like his parentage. And I had no idea whether you were going to use any aspect, but I wanted to put two things out there and just see what happens. The whole parentage hasn't come up, doesn't need to come up, wasn't expecting it to. But if you were to put something out there, or the conversation were to somehow get around to parents, all of a sudden, well, now Vel would feel like he's unearthing a secret because he hasn't told everybody about this. And, I feel like that is a really good way to manage a character's backstory, to be like, okay, well, I want to hold some things in reserve until it comes up in a story or it comes up in the conversation so that it feels more natural. And yeah, sure, it might be deemed as holding a secret, but I think everybody should hold those things so that when you have a chance to kind of like, oh, well, here's something else that I haven't shared and you're 15, 20 sessions deep. It's like, oh, well, now we get to know a little bit more about who this character is. So like that's become my approach on characters to kind of not just info dump everywhere like I used to do.
So I don't consider those things secrets. Um, to me, a secret is something you actively are trying to keep hidden, right? I
Okay.
think there's a difference between that and just something that hasn't come up. What? Your favorite color is blue. You've been keeping a secret from me for so long.
Gotcha.
Curse you! No, it just hasn't come up or whatever. And there's things of that nature. Now it would be different if you're like, oh, well, parents haven't really come up, so Val hasn't talked about them, as opposed to Bell will never reveal anything about his parents because dot dot
Right,
dot.
right.
You know, so like I see them as being a little bit different, and but you're right. Like you know, slow dripping out like your backstory to the party is much better than dumping it on them all at once, especially if you can do it in game and make it relatable. But the same can happen with secrets as well. Um, it could be a pivotal moment in a character's um arc where they feel comfortable enough to reveal to the rest of the you have a secret, you know, or what whatever that might be, and or maybe it's something that's coming up and is kind of pending, like there's going to be a threat that the party might have to deal with. Oh, and that's because like I made a deal or bargain or broke an oath, and you know, this is kind of the consequence.
So from a story perspective, then I would say if you're talking about a character secret, it's going to fall into the category of I don't want this revealed, and I'm actively gonna fight against it, or like I've talked to the DM, and while the character doesn't want it revealed, it's going to happen, and the character is going to have to deal with it, but the player is totally on board for it. And that's where I love the dynamics of sometimes like the player and the character don't always have to agree on things. And I think those moments where the secrets are forced to come out and the character is just having to deal with it, that's where you can kind of have a really growth moment. And it can be related to combat, it can be related to basically any pillar based on whatever the secret winds up being. And that's why I thought this would be a pretty cool topic, because just from that standpoint alone of just the forced secret reveal
Yeah.
can really be like an unforgettable moment at the table.
So I mean, there's a couple things there. Uh, MI982. Is it a good idea to intertwine character secrets into the main story? It can be. Like it all depends what they are and how you want to reveal them. And also like what does the player feel about that? How does the your players feel about that? If it's, sometimes, they feel like they want to have control and agency over this one thing. They you might want to discuss it beforehand before intertwining it. Um, and also like sometimes I find players like just keep like weird secrets, and I guess that's what I kind of getting to with the player with the secretive like character sheet. Kind of annoying. Like
Mm.
they don't have any real secrets. It's just they don't want other people to know about their character.
Well, like I feel like I haven't had to deal with that in a long time, especially because we often use D&D Beyond. So like,
Yeah.
oh, person creates a campaign, all the characters are there. So it's like if somebody really wanted to go look at a sheet, oh, I know what spells you have. I know, oh, look, let me go look at your notes section. I can do that. It takes those elements out. Sure, your backstory might be in a whole completely different doc, but sometimes people write their backstory right there on their character sheet. So it's like, well, it's all right here in plain black and white.
And well, also too, like it depends on your group. Like I feel like our group is pretty good at separating player knowledge from from character knowledge. Especially in some of our more long running that have been going on for a while. Like the one group that we play in, has been around in some iteration or another for like 20 plus years at this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and while we basically have the four of us that have been gaming together for that long, there's only a couple additives that have joined us in recent years.
Um, but that being said, like a session zero might be a good place to discuss things like secrets, right? You may not want to discuss the specific secrets because then they won't be secret anymore. But like you could at least get a read for the rest of the group and see how they feel about it.
Yeah, and if everybody has a chance to talk about the concept of secrets and what it means, what some people are bothered with and what some people aren't, and then the individual, the actual concept, not or beyond the concept, the information of the secret can then be talked about between the player and the GM and handled however the group has decided to go about doing it. I'm guessing you're reading a chat.
I am, I am. So I had several players. I had several players who choose to have dark secrets, rogue trader, but never wanted to go into claiming it was too sensitive. However, the sweep +6 to a stat was fine. Okay, so I get it. So my guess is some kind of flaw system, uh,
Okay.
and Benny system, and they wanted to exploit the flaws to get the benefits, but not actually have the flaws come up. And
Yes.
that's why going from second edition to third edition Mutants and Masterminds, they completely reworked how your flaws work.
Yep.
Before it was like a trade off. You take some flaws, you get some bonuses. Now it's like, no, you get hero points when your flaws come
When you're
up,
Yeah.
which
So like that is a significantly better system as opposed to be like, oh, well, I essentially get, points that I can make a stronger character, a better character, or a more options character if I just do it this way. It definitely was a much bigger swing, and I kind of wish D&D had an easier way of doing that than what it's supposed to be now, because like, yeah, I know it's supposed to be oh, when your flaws come up you get inspiration, but I haven't noticed a single DM ever like call upon that kind of stuff or ever reward that kind of stuff, because I just think it's not done as well as what Mutants and Masterminds did.
yeah, I mean, I've seen one player during a game invoke their flaws, and that made it a little bit easier. I guess you would have to do it. It's a little cheesy, but it also is kind of funny, and it worked really well for the game that we're playing. It was actually just a pickup game at Gen Con, and
Okay.
with some folks, and Juice from Master of the Game was, I don't even remember the character specifically he was playing, but like his one of his things was like, I always make a plan, Then one of his flaws was I never stick to the plan.
Oh,
So he would
nice.
he would like do these elaborate like planning session with the group and then immediately invoke his flaw and break his own plan.
Well, the only memorable time where I felt like my flaw came up was in one of your games, the first 5e game. So I was playing Relion, and Relion can't lie. That was his flaw. Always told the truth. Uh, and we were like at this stronghold and what have you, and we're having a conversation, and it was like, all right, Relion, you have to stop talking now, because whatever ruse the party was trying to come up with, I was doing a lot of the talking, and all of a sudden it was like, I can't say that. So like I think somebody else had to like step up and get
I
involved, and
I
I don't
feel like
remember.
I feel like you were tackled by the Gobblos on several occasions throughout that campaign for talking. Or they would send you elsewhere when talking needed to be done.
It is entirely probable, but I only remember the one instance, um, of like we're like literally at this like gated stronghold. And I don't know whether it was, dealing with Vargarians or before Vargarians. I know it was early enough in the campaign that Pete was still around. And I'm like, nope, I can't do this.
Yeah, because he was trying to do something shady. It was a shady tavern meeting. I do recall, but yeah, and you probably did not get inspiration for it either, especially back
Well,
then.
like I mean, again, I think it's not a prominent enough rule. And after more than a decade of fifth edition, like that's not what GMs tend to do. And if, like literally all it would take would be like, all right, I'm going to keep a cheat sheet, whether it be in the doc or like literally like hanging from my DM screen of, here's my player flaws. Let me just read through it at the start of every session. Okay, I know what these things are. If it comes up, you flick a coin of inspiration. But usually in the games that I'm in, hey, you did something cool or you said something really funny, have an inspiration. Now, and I'm okay with that. But I just felt like if they made it bigger, you know, then it could really be better. I don't know.
I don't even fill out those parts of the character sheet anymore.
I I I've had times where I've ignored that too. So I definitely understand that.
So I feel like over the years, all kinds of secrets have come up throughout the games where um the play like some of the players weren't always working for the same side. That's like the biggest secret
Yep,
thing, right? The biggest secret that's
sure.
happened in our games, and going way back to even like our first like our AD&D campaign, and I remember Psycho was actually working as a weapons smuggler, but he gave you
All
guys
right.
some other
Now
kind of story.
now for those of you out there, if you are, somewhat newer to the channel, we haven't mentioned that, that characters or that player in a while. Psycho was his nickname. We're not trying to like throw shade or, do any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he was like
Mike
five
was
two, 90 pounds soaking wet, and he joined the Marines.
he
Super
he
smart
he
kid.
was he was an embodiment of chaos, and
He was,
Psycho was just his name. Like
think, tweaked out Chihuahua.
great kid, a lot of fun to game with. But Psycho fit.
Yeah, so like that was definitely one. There was another, my I remember my Eberron game.
Talking about
Uh,
Will.
yeah, Will was actually
Uh,
spying on the group the whole time, and
uh, the awesomest thing I think about that was Will was moving out of Jersey and going back to Maine, and like the entire campaign, like he played a really great low key character, and his finale, like the players last time gaming with us, like we end the session with guards showing up to haul this guy away, and like the entire party is like, no, you can't take him, he's our friend, this, that, and the other thing, and he's like, no, man, they're right.
I
And
did it.
everybody's jaw just drops.
Yeah, I think so. I think like the charge was he was charged with impersonating an agent of House Thrask, um, which one of the players was actually from House Thrask and had no idea that he was an impersonator, and like he was ready to hardcore throw down with the guards over this. Um,
Yeah, it was like I said, it was really shocking to like not only the characters but the players as well. It was really well done, well executed.
yeah, and you know when it came out, it's like, well, actually harming the group wasn't part of their orders. And so they were kind of like, well, I like you guys. It's nothing personal. It's just business. You know, I've just been spying on you a little bit. So which was kind of cool. Who knows where that secret would have taken us had had Will stuck around, not going back to Maine. Um, but there's other ways of doing it too, like the DM plant, like that can be a lot of fun. You can't do it all the time, or your players will get suspicious. But I know like the Night of the Witch Hunter is a one shot on the
Oh,
channel, and I don't know spoilers, but we played that game like over 5 years ago.
yeah,
Well over.
it was before Doug joined us, so yeah.
So the Witch Hunter had just come out. There was only three subclasses, I think. It's like the first iteration, and
Yeah, it was Witch Hunter before it was Blood Hunter.
yeah, yeah. And you guys were like, let's test it out. Let's do like a play test. And I ran an adventure, and so three of you each played a subclass, and then Ty Johnson used to help us out with some editing on the channel. He jumped in as a cleric to help the party, but it turned out he was after the same thing the players were after. So at the very end, he turns on them to try and get the goods and make his escape, which
Yeah,
did
and
did almost happened, but didn't quite.
now, had Ty been smarter about how he was managing that last fight, or if we were playing like tactically on a board, I really feel that Ty would have been able to win. Now, I don't know if Ty made the choice because he was the bad guy and he wanted to lose, or whether it was like, well, I can't defeat the Nerdarchy guys or on their own channel, it'll look bad. But I was the last one standing,
I'm all
and
for that.
I was sure, I'm here for it. But my character was a melee dude, was super slow. There is no reason I should have been able to get to him every round. Um,
Plunge you
it
to death
was
with Saber Flame.
Sacred Flame. Yeah, I mean, there were plenty of things that he could have done that would have would have put me down. But I wound up, we wound up winning. I wound up winning, whatever you want to call it. And it was a lot of fun, but I was definitely yet again surprised by the DM plant because I hadn't expected it.
Well, and that's just it. Like that's why you can't do it too often, right? Or it's not fun anymore, and you lose the wow factor, right? The surprise
Mm-hmm.
of it. Um, and also too, like as a DM, when you do it, it's not about beating the players, right? It's not about you know getting those gotchas, um, and trying to prove like how much smarter you are than your players. It's about telling a fun and interesting story together, and it should add to that and build on top of it. And shouldn't it shouldn't be the purpose of like taking away or to knock your players down a peg. Um,
You can do it for the surprise, the aha moments, but ultimately it's a collaborative storytelling, regardless of what RPG you're doing. And there should always, be the chance of success for either side. Uh, that's how it works. Things should come down to tactics and dice and what have you. In my case, I definitely lean heavier on the side of the players wanting to win. I haven't done a fight that's been 50-50 or
Yeah.
60-40 in a long time. Um, I've had some tough fights, sure, but nothing that's been like, oh man, one player was left standing with a single hit point. No, I haven't done that in who knows how long.
Yeah, so like the plan stuff like that, I think also too like you need the right player to do that stuff with. Who are
Yes,
going to lean into the narratives more than the just trying to win. I will
right.
absolutely do the just trying to win if the GM like mind controls my character in that instance, but I feel like that's completely different.
Sure, those are a different thing, and we've talked about that on the channel. We've done some games where it's like, all right, this happens, and how are you going to react? And sometimes people go, all right, I'm going to dump everything I got, and I'm going to use all my items, and I'm gonna take somebody out. It's like, well, holy crap! And then you have the other people who are like, yeah, I half-ass and swing my sword in that general direction, and oh look, I didn't roll well enough.
So, MI982 again. Have you ever used specific handout notes to players with secrets when encountering adventure, story, key points? Over the years, sure. I mean, we used to do a lot of like away from the table talk and note passing notes around. I want to say like when we got away from having like weekly games, that kind of died out because you just don't have as much time to delve into that stuff as I think as I would like, unfortunately. So
When also, like, when you get 3 to 4 and a half weeks in between sessions, you also have a lot of time away from the table that you can just either pick up the phone or do a text message and get all of that stuff taken care of. I mean, I've done plenty of, you know, player to DM talks, uh, you know, for a lot of different games to hash out character stuff. Um, you know, like I said, I don't do a whole lot of DM plants or any of that, nonsense, but there's always things that come up, and you can treat those similar things exactly the same way. It's like, look, if you pull a player aside and you have a conversation, it's kind of like DM asked for a perception check and I rolled a 3. Well, there was something I should have been able to see there and I didn't see it. I should be weary. You're going to get weary when the DM pulls a player aside. It
yeah.
might just be hey, I need to confirm something from your backstory. What was the name of that elf again? Um, and or it could very well be, okay, tonight's the night that you're going to turn on the party. When I call for this is when you're going to go into action. It can be either or. But with digital communication so much easier these days than 20 years ago, it's a lot easier to just be like, all right, well, in between sessions, this is what I'm gonna handle that there. Heck, I can pick up my phone and while I'm DMing, I'll send a quick message and oh, Bob the player, picks up their phone because a text message was sent, or was received. They read it, you don't have to talk to them at all. Nobody knows whether I'm checking my notes or if I've got my phone behind a screen. Who's to know whether I'm actually sending somebody a message or not?
Uh, I did. I would took part in a mini series, mini campaign for Bass Grim, and Goblin Katie was in it as well. And she did an amazing job of tricking all of us. But I really benefited from the trick the most.
Benefited.
Benefited. In that
Yeah,
game,
she shoved a worm down your throat.
it's an OSR game, and it's pretty simplistic, but it's got classes, and I was probably playing like one of the merc. I think I was playing a treacherous merc, and she claimed the whole game she was playing a sole survivor. But there's this other class that is basically a sect that worships them or they, and which are these worms that infest you and basically kind of like a hive mind thing. Well, she was actually a priest of them instead, and at the end hit me with a something that paralyzed my character and then gave me a worm. Which one of the ways you die in that game is like eventually you know the worm takes over and you know your character it's not necessarily dead, it's just not yours anymore.
Yep. You get your I don't know if it's zombified or what, what the legit term is, but the worm is in control and you're not.
Yeah.
But we have actually crossed the halfway mark. So if you look above our heads, you'll see, powered by Easy Roller Dice. They've been a sponsor of the channel for a long time. So we always ask that if you got the interest and the ability to go give them some love. They actually currently have a follow right now for their new campaign that's going to come out for some awesome looking dice of fire and ice. I know I'm really looking forward to checking those dice out. Is the link for that down in the description, Dave?
It is.
All right. So if you follow down the description below, not only will you find a link to, Easy Roller Dice and a promo code to be able to get 25% off your first order, but there's going to be a link for that follow page over on BackerKit. Go join that. You've got to get the email and say, yes, I want to follow this. And that'll get you in. So as soon as that campaign goes off, you'll be able to back it and get these super sweet looking dice. They're great for spellcasters that like fire and or ice. I know, like I said, I'm looking forward to getting a set myself. Uh, we also should have down in the description below a link to D&D in a Castle, where yours truly is going to be there this particular summer, August 18th to the 22nd. Be running a 3-day campaign, 24 hours of amazing gaming in Mohican Castle in Ohio, so you don't have to pay for the out-of-state travel to get to England this time. So go check it out and join a campaign with me.
Or if you want to play more D&D, they're also offering their hardcore mode, and you can check that out. I think they do hardcore mode at all the castles now. And if 24 hours of D&D is not enough for you, you have the option for 36.
Yeah, 36 hours over the course of like three and a half days. That's a bit intense. But hey, the hardcore mode offers a lot of fun and challenging aspects of D&D and really of your time, because that's a lot of gaming in a short amount of time. So any other things that I'm missing?
We're also, you may be aware, we ran a Kickstarter for our own game. It did not succeed. We're going to relaunch that campaign. There is a link in the description to sign up for the follow page with that as well. Someone actually just messaged me about it today, and asked if when we're doing it and when we're going to, when we're going to relaunch that Kickstarter. We are working. We are have some things in the works that we need to happen first, and also we need to get the follows up higher in order to.
Yeah, so share that out there, get people talking about it. And this way, once we go live, we can get that funded super quick and start working on what stretch goals we might be able to make happen.
So let's delve back into secrets here. And we've discussed a lot of things that have to do with betrayal, but secrets don't always have to be that, right? It doesn't
Correct.
always have to be about, harming the party or you're going to betray the party. There's a lot of reasons why someone might keep a secret. It could be shame or embarrassment. It could be out of fear. Um, there are so many things, so many different avenues that you can play with it, and it can lead towards different types of story arcs. In one of the recent games, like my character was inflicted with lycanthropy. He got better, so it wasn't so bad, but it could have been worse. How do you deal with that? How does the player deal with that? Especially like if when they change, it's away from the group, and then like they're doing stuff, and then they're getting flashbacks and stuff they've done. They're hearing stories about these attacks that have happened. Um, do they want to come forth to the party, and let them know? Maybe one of the characters is like an inquisitor style paladin. Like, you really want to let that guy know that you might have accidentally wolfed out and ate a townsperson or two. I don't know.
or like the aspect of what happens if you change in front of the party and are out of control because it's a forced change, and then you have to attack a party member. Then somebody else now has like or potentially has lycanthropy as well. While it is not exactly the same in with a typical D&D game, my character is a lycanthrope, if you will, in the Kids on Bikes game, and I wasn't even thinking about you know biting and changing into a werewolf when I lost control of my character. And the DM's like, okay, what are you trying to do? Now, the point of attack was kind of picked, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to grab her by the ankle and try and drag her away. Well, the only way to drag is this particular werewolf was to bite, and thankfully I wound up missing. But it was a scenario that like that very moment has become like a sore spot between these two characters. Um,
One little
and
one little lycanthropic bite, and all of a sudden, no one wants to be your friend.
and it was a scenario where like for many many sessions, the animosity that she felt for my character was like kept secret. Like it was held off, that like my character had no way of knowing. Like when I first changed, like fully changed, I had no memory of what was going on. And then there was like time passed, and the night was over, and I awoke somewhere else and had no idea how I got there. And then before we could wind up doing anything and discussing what happened, some greater changes happened, and that made everything that much more chaotic. So like the two characters haven't really had it out yet. Like we both know what's going on, but we haven't had time to like sit down and really be like, okay, let's get to the yelling and screaming.
Or biting. So MI982 again. How do you feel? How do you deal with players who unknowingly create secrets, which could potentially derail campaign plot? So here's the thing, right? Like, I don't actually personally believe in campaign plots per se. I or derailing them, because I just go in the direction that my players want to go for the most part. Now that's not to say there might not be consequences for actions, or other the other things might not still happen, but for the most part, I'm more than happily to change which direction the campaign's going if all of a sudden my players seem really interested in doing something else. So I kind of see those as wins, because it shows that the players have really got invested in something that's happened in the game, so much so that whatever plot was going on before, they have no problem abandoning it to pursue this new avenue.
So one of two things has happened. Either the story that you've presented isn't as appealing as they want it to be, so they've concocted something to go off and do instead. No problems there. I know I love player agency, and I'm willing to go whatever direction you want. Or, as you said, you know, you've presented something that has made a far greater appeal than whatever other story was going. Regardless of which one of those things it is, the group has decided that this is the direction that they want to go. And while you are the storyteller, you are the one puppeting everything else around it. they are the central characters in this story. Regardless of what other campaign notes and outlines that you've come up with, if they're not attached to your outline anymore, shove it aside and go in the direction the players want to go. I've had that happen. I've jumped on, many a derail, as a DM to be like, okay, well, here's where we're going now. Let's go for it. I'm along for the ride, and it's why for a couple of years, I I ran my campaigns, my sessions off of, anywhere from 0 to 3 sentences. I just, okay, I'll react to whatever you guys say and you want to do, because I was not going to plot and plan when the players weren't going to do what I had plotted and planned.
Now, and to be clear, it doesn't mean necessarily that one is better than the other. It doesn't mean that whatever your campaign plot originally was bad, but whatever that's been uncovered during play has struck them on a deeper, more personal level, right? And you're going to always just get more investment and buy-in from the players when that happens, and sometimes it's something you do intentionally, but more often than not, it's just something that happens organically in the game. And you can either roll with that or you can try and get them back in the direction you want. But ultimately, I find that usually leads to friction. Um, and it's a lot more difficult to.
Unless
What's that?
unless you find a way,
Yeah.
to relink those concepts together. Oh, you made all of these things. You really want to use this dragon fight. Well, you know what? Whatever sideline they're in is going to require them to kind of come back and deal with this dragon. Some people might find that annoying. Some people, might not care. Some people could be like, yay, we get to do both. Um, but there's always ways to tie things together. And when you look at, movies, TVs, novels, some things seem like, hey, wow, they all of a sudden made a left turn and they're dealing with something. Uh, and we've talked about Dresden Files lots of times. They have a very similar kind of standpoint where there's all these things going on, and you realize, oh, it's all connected. So you can find a way, or if you can find a way to tie all of these knots of stories together, you can let them have their cake and you can eat it too, because it's all part of a grander plot. Maybe you hadn't thought that way, initially, but give it some thought and figure out how you can get it all linked, and then you get to do it all.
Um. So yeah. So am I? I'm not really following what exactly you mean, but also a lot of times when players do things, just in general, they do it unknowingly, right? Like, and a lot of like my inspiration as a GM has come from things that things. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the chat. From things that were kind of offhandedly done in the game or said in the game, and then like, oh, well, that could be really interesting or a lot of fun, and so I just roll with that or roll that right back into the game. So a lot of times it's not intentional or a conscious decision. It's just what's interesting to them at the time, or in the case where you're saying, well, has something to do with the character that they made that kind of unwinds things or makes it make it doesn't make sense anymore. You know, well, what about it doesn't make sense anymore? Like that's the point where you would have to look and see, where the breakage is and see if that's something you can repair or fix, or it doesn't create a branch where it's going to cause things to go in a different direction. Which either is fine as long as everyone at the table is happy.
Yeah, I think they're saying like the new character that's created is kind of a nonsense character and doesn't work with whatever twist is going on. The characters that tend to be a little bit nonsense, from my perspective, have always been well, they're just along for the ride. Now, if that's not the case, you know, I would need more specific information to kind of figure it out. But literally, it's a scenario where everything can work with everything. You just have to figure out how to mix and match and get everybody all on the same page. And yes, Brimstone, we've talked about Dresden Files many times here. I myself, I'm a huge Jim Butcher fan. Can't wait for him to actually finish all of them. But he keeps going off in other directions.
I mean, we got some Cinder Spire goodness, which is decent as
Yeah.
well. But that was also on hold for like 5 years. He looked like he was going to go George R. R. Martin on us.
I mean that's my fear is like we've got an ever growing plot line. That's the secret of where he's taking this thing, and we still got like at least 5 more books, so like that's gonna take him 10 to 20 years. I don't want to wait that long.
Time travel. The secret is time travel.
No, because if that happens, I'm gonna go to the future, and then I'm gonna get all kinds of disappointed if he decides that he's not gonna finish them, or God forbid he kicks the bucket before he gets them finished.
I have faith and confidence that he's going to get through.
Well, I
I got a
certainly hope
good
so.
feeling about that butcher kid.
The butcher kid. Isn't he older than us?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think by a lot, but yes.
So we got about 12 minutes. Do we want to stick to character stuff, or do we want to, switch over and kind of go into, more like DM secrets and hidden locations and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we can branch out. Tell me about the secret location you that inspired it all.
Oh, so I usually walk within my neighborhood, and I decided I needed some change of scenery. So I decided to, jump on the railroad tracks and just kind of like walk through the woods. And, there was a spot where, it looked like some kind of animal warren or, small kobold cave that was just out behind the houses. And I'm like, hey, hadn't really paid attention to this thing before. I don't know if you know, the trees that had been taken down recently and it opened up an area, or whether it's just been the fact that I don't think I've been on the tracks for years. Um, but I'm like, hey, that that to me, if I were an adventurer, that would be a location that I would want to check out. I'd want to see what's going on there. Um, because it looked like it was a video game, and that was an area to highlight that shouldn't have been highlighted.
Uh, so, what about some secret locations you've used in your game?
So I a lot of times uh kind of allow that stuff to just kind of come out. And like the biggest thing that I've done, was it was kind of a learning point for me as a DM, and it was, here on the channel in my 5e game, where there was a secret location. There was like the hidden doorway, and as soon as I started talking, or as soon as I stopped talking, I wanted to hit myself, because I'm like, no, you shouldn't ask for this. But I asked for a perception check or an investigation check, whatever it was, and Ryan rolled a 9. And I'm like, as soon as I spoke, I'm like, what happens if he fails? What happens if he doesn't roll well enough? This is where the campaign has to go. So I had to like think when he rolled poorly. It's like, well, maybe it just takes longer for you to find the thing. So like that was my big thing, is like, look, if it's a hidden tunnel, a secret, and this is where that has to go, don't ask for a roll, because if you're not prepared to come up with a quick answer of how to deal with it when they fail, you might just derail your own game. The players might be having fun. The players might be smart and be able to figure out an alternative route. But if the secret is a big thing and the DC is, more than what they deal with, then it's possible that it's all just stopped. And that's not what you want. You want the campaign to keep moving. You want the story to keep rolling. So since that moment, anytime that there's been some kind of secret thing, it's not it's not a requirement. This is something extra. And sometimes when I am talking and whatnot, a part of my description will speak to somebody. I'm like, oh, I want to go and investigate that. So sometimes I'll be like, all right, well, let me roll some dice behind the screen. Is that some kind of secret entrance? Is that something more here? Maybe it's going to be, and we'll see what the dice have to say. And then, as I always do, or as I do often enough anymore, I'll just whip something up, right there on the fly. Because, secrets are an important thing. And if it's a hidden treasure stash or, a hidden warren of monsters, the players enjoy finding those things that are hidden because discovery is part of what this game is about. And the players, at least the ones that I've played with, they love rolling dice and, they love going in and, seeing what's there.
So, oh, that's fitting. That's fitting. So, and I'm gonna butcher the hell out of this, but mentioned secret tunnel, which immediately made me think of this story in the news. There was a secret synagogue in New York City. They had tunneled under buildings, and someone was like, "I keep hearing people speak Yiddish or something," and he could, it was coming up through the vents or whatever.
Mhm.
And it was kind of recent, and sometimes real life is just strange, and you just need to incorporate it into your games. Because to me, how much fun would that to be to do you know voices in the walls or something? They're speaking Sylvan or one of the Fey tongues. And you could definitely play with that kind of stuff. But you know, you can rip stuff like that right out of the news and be like, there's this person in town. Everyone thinks might be a little addled or something wrong because he keeps talking about hearing voices, but it turns out there's really a tunnel under his house, or there's really creatures living in his walls that he's hearing. So I feel like you can have a lot of fun with that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So there's a question in the chat here from Parks. How do you feel about DMs secretly rolling saving throws for curses, charms, diseases, and the like?
So I mean, we've done it in our games in the past. There are pros and cons to it, like everything else. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna have those players, if you have them make the rolls, then
They want to know why.
they want to know why, and then they start trying to gamify the result, which kind of defeats the purpose, right? So therefore, the DM might be like, "Oh, this is a secret roll." I've heard of different ways of getting around of it. I've heard the DM, you know, having holding a dice tray up high so they can't roll, but letting them roll it. Again, that requires trust with your GM. There's definitely GMs that we've played with in the past that we might be a little leery of what they say. Um, so it ultimately just comes down to trusting the players at the table and everyone respecting
So I
each
think
other.
I think the safest way to go about doing that requires you as the DM to have access to what their modifiers are, what their roles would be, and you just tell them roll a d20 for me, and you can even just go around the table. Hey guys, I need everybody to roll a die for me, and you just jot every single number down. Whether you handwrite it, whether you put it in your digital notes, but ultimately, if it's only one player that's being affected by something, you know, you then can be like, okay, well, John rolled a 10, it's got a +3 modifier. DC was 15, he failed. Okay, I'll let them know that, okay, this is what's going on at some point in time, or when it next could possibly be affected by, that scenario. That I feel is kind of um, the best way to go about doing it, because they're the one that's still rolling to die. Uh, but it's a scenario of they don't know what they're rolling, and you know won't metagame the situation. They won't be able to know what's going on, because as far as they're concerned, well, everybody rolled a d20 and that's just how it works. um so it makes it a little bit easier from that standpoint.
So Anne says I've done the secret death saving rolls before. Definitely adds to the drama. Actually, and that's a really good idea because the rest of the table really wouldn't know how many death saves you have left necessarily. And I know I mentioned Goblin Katie earlier, but she's told me she's played in games where when she makes her death saves, she only tells the GM, she doesn't tell anybody. And like it kind of like ups the drama, like you said, but also the urgency, because we've definitely been at players have been playing been at tables with players, and they're like, "You're good. You got at least one more round left."
Yeah, when you haven't failed one yet, it's like, all right, I'll get you next round.
Yeah,
It's like, but what happens if I roll a one and then something else happens?
yeah,
It's like, to me, it's like, all right, I'm either playing that kind of cleric or I'm not playing that kind of cleric.
yeah.
Is that's the always the deciding factor. Um, so I it is what it is.
But no,
It's a
definitely like going along with secrets. That definitely works, and that definitely adds more tension to the game. Especially if you wanted to up the ante a little bit and play in a game that has a little bit more consequences and a little more risk to it, I think just that one element would would change it up a lot.
So any final questions that we want to
Uh,
get to before we
Our
head
D
on out of here?
our Ravenloft DM is getting ideas.
Oh, that's always scary. He's got enough crazy going on.
Yeah, MI
Enough.
982. It's incredible how many times a player will fail the first death saving throw and then roll a one on the next turn. That was our first character death. They had one failed death save and then they rolled the one. And actually the players were actively trying to help that character, but they failed their medicine check and the next
we
death
we
roll.
it was a scenario where we hadn't learned the value of the healer's kit, and it was a deal of, okay, well, we just kind of sat back and did the thing, and player came, failed the medicine check. There wasn't a healer's kit. We didn't have a cleric at that point in time.
Yep.
So I think they rolled in the player rolled a 9 on the medicine check, and second roll was a natural one. Dude kicked it.
Yeah, and they're like, I'm dead. What do you mean I'm dead?" So
It's
that
like,
was our first 5e death. But on that note, we will be back here Tuesday night. So come hang out for us as we play some Dungeons and Delving. All those links are in the description. Those favorite, check them out. And until next time, stay nerdy.
stay nerdy.